Thanks everybody for being here, and good morning to everyone. My name is Luca Bandini, and for the past 4 or so years, I've been with a customer consulting team based here in London, and my job is to help people understand whether Tableau is a good fit as a platform within their organizations. And since joining Tableau, I have truly seen Tableau sort of consolidate its position in the market and becoming a true standard for analytics. And today what's happening is that organizations of all sizes and across all industries are adopting Tableau as their standard. And that means that they're rolling out Tableau to larger and larger groups of consumers. And this is happening not just because more analysts are creating more content and sharing more content with people, but also because organizations are truly starting to think about the way they roll out Tableau, to think about how they can change their processes to enable people to self-serve and consume content in a different way. So for a company whose goal it is to really roll out Tableau and promote a true self-service analytics culture, it is important to find key individuals that understand the potential of the platform and that understands the technical side of things, but also the process side of things, and everything that is needed to make this happen and to make this successful. So the goal of this session is to take you Tableau desktop experts, you Tableau desktop pros, on a journey to become those people that can shape the way people and organizations think about data. And that's also why we labeled this session as advanced, because we sort of wanted to lure you in. We wanted to have real Tableau desktop experts and teach you how you can become something more than just someone who shares visualizations and analytical content with their colleagues. So let's take a look at what we're going to talk about today. The first thing that we'll cover is why. Why and how to enable self-service analytics. Then we'll understand what are the different roles that we identify in an organization that wants to do this in a successful way and in a scalable way and in an efficient way. We'll then see how all of these things sort of fit together in the Tableau world. And we'll take a quick tour of some of the technical aspects that you need to be aware of for this to be successful. And lastly, we'll take a tour of the platform and we'll see a live demo of sort of the different roles and how they can interact and what their contribution can be to a successful self-service deployment. So before we get started with the topics, the role that I have of a consultant sort of dictates that I start always with the why before I even start to address the how. So I want to tell you a little story about one of the customers that I've been working with. I've been working with them since February, and they just became a customer last week, which I'm very happy about. Essentially, when I first met them, much to the fear of my associate, the salesman, who's targeted against sales quotas, so they have to sell. I met them and they asked us, we want to roll out Tableau. So this was not a competitive scenario where they were thinking about, should it be Tableau, should it be Power BI, should it be something else? They said, we have selected you guys. And so my sales colleague was, yes, yes, this is an easy one. Until I asked, so why? Why do you want to do this? It's a significant investment that you want to make. Why do you want to spend all of that money, give us all of that money to change something else? Do you not have BI? Do you not have analytics? Because I wanted to explain to me why they're doing this and what was going wrong. So what emerged is that essentially the tools that they had at the time were simply not good enough to scale and to meet the needs of an evolving organization. So what they'd done is they'd acquired some companies. Some more regulations had been imposed on them, which meant they had to report more on their data. And what they tried to do was just take the tools that they had, take the processes that they had, and scale up. Let's do exactly the same thing that we've been doing for the past 10 years, but let's do it more and see if that works. That did not work. So someone new was brought in and was asked to change the way they wanted to do analytics. And that's why they chose us. And that's why they were thinking about a different set of processes on top of a different tool, because the tool alone is not enough. So let's talk about what can fail in a situation like that when we have traditional reporting. This is a fairly simple flow that we have here of traditional reporting factories. We have our developer in the middle, who's identified themselves as a developer of dashboards at some point in their career. I see a few people, both internally and externally, that idea of the developer of content is fairly common. I see that all the time. So we have those people that are highly skilled And those people are tasked with pretty much everything in the report-centric model. They take care of the left side of things, which is the data warehouse, the data lake, all the mess that is on the left, all the complicated stuff. But they're also tasked with serving consumers with a high volume of content, which becomes hard to maintain. So what happens in this model, and you can see the little warning signs of everything that can go wrong there. Business users, they don't have the tools and the ability to create content and to answer their own questions. They have business questions because they're very close to the business. That's what they do every day. It's their job. But they don't have the tools to do it. Developers have all the skills to understand the complicated stuff on the left, but they're detached from the business. They don't necessarily understand what the business really needs. And that was actually something that the people that I was talking to that were actually developers at the company admitted to. We don't know. We create 400 reports, and we don't know if people use them, we don't know how people use them, and we don't know if they're happy with them before they actually come there and complain that we haven't given them what they need, right? There's a sort of disconnection. These people don't talk in organizations, in my experience. And company, got nothing against my consultant friends, but company very frequently have to rely on external consultants a lot more than they can afford. And so they have to cut down and only focus on certain areas of what they want to do, and they're not able to roll out the entire picture, everything that they would like to do. So some of the comments that I get from my customers when I start talking about these topics, I start proposing this new methodology, are sort of like this. These are fictional, by the way, but they sort of encompass what people have told me in the past. It's never going to work. This is my friend, Mando, that said that. It's never going to work, right? It's too complicated. I don't really trust my end users to be able to self-serve. They're not very good. I've seen what they've done with Excel. Or on the other hand, it's going to actually create more volume of work for us. I don't want that. We can't handle that. We don't have the people. Another thing that frequently comes up, even though people are a little bit more reluctant to share this, is, wait a second. Hold on. My job is to deliver analytics to people. If people are doing analytics themselves, what do I do? This is going to cost me my job. So I do get a lot of fear from people when I propose a change in process where they have to take on a different role. So I have to explain to them that it's a different role. It's not that their role is going away. It's evolving to something better and something different. And what I try to explain is where self-service analytics can actually fail. What can go wrong, and why do we need people that actually support the process so that it works? So what happens is business users may have access to the right BI tools. You've bought Tableau, you've made a fantastic choice, but they don't know the data side of things. What database do I connect to? I open Tableau Desktop or a creator license. I have a creator license on server for the first time. Okay, now what? What do I connect to? What database is the right one? What table is the correct one? How do I join these tables? What is join again? Inner, left, outer, right? I don't know. So that doesn't necessarily work very well for people that don't have that knowledge of the complicated data side of things. And then failure to govern data sources properly can lead to very, very poor performance and quality. Who's ever had a performance issue in their career? Everybody, come on. That's because of data source duplication. We have a fantastic data engine. We have some hyper people in the room. Round of applause for them. Thanks for making hyper. Thank you. It's fantastic, but we can't stress it too much, right? It has some limitations, not many, but it has some limitations. So if we take our beautiful server and we put 100 data sources that are all the same just because we told people go and play, that's not efficient. We are using up all of our resources to do stuff that is actually not needed. Data source duplication. Suboptimal data models. As a user, I might think that, I got the data that it looks right. It looks like it looked in Excel 5 years ago, so I'm assuming it's right. But the data model might actually be suboptimal. There might be a better way to connect to that data source. So even though I think I've done it right, I might not have done it right. And then errors. People will make mistakes if you don't teach them, if you don't give them the tools to do things right. If they're not experts in data, they might make mistakes. We don't want that. So this is where self-service can fail. There's a disconnect between the authors, the people that we want to empower to self-serve, and the complicated stuff, the data lake, the data warehouse, that stuff on the left that no one wants to take care of if they're business users. And then what happens is content can be pushed out to the consumers that is not efficient, suboptimal, or just plain dead wrong. Another sort of objection that I get from the more skilled IT people and database administrators when I propose this is, can I just do this in the data warehouse? Can I just build a data warehouse that will take care of all the left side, of all the complicated stuff? Well, yes, you can. Of course you can. But in my experience, data store definition can take a long time if we're approaching everything as a data warehousing project, every sort of little data issue as a data warehousing project. It becomes inflexible, it becomes hard to maintain. It's an entirely different skill set. We need to have people in the organization that know how to maintain a data warehouse. That's not a given, especially for small to medium-sized organization. And then security can be quite hard to implement as well. Also, there can be very, very, very little focus on what the user experience is. So think about, you have your data warehouse. What are the barriers to people accessing the data? Well, they still have to know an IP address. They still have to have credentials to access the data warehouse. They still have to know, maybe there are technical names in their table that it might still be hard for them to go and get that right information that they need. Whereas something like Data Server, we'll see later, really gives end users a nice way to access that information easily from a UX, a user interface perspective. And then we can provide access to these things to people via the web without enabling any additional web interfaces that are expensive and hard to maintain. Data Server is built to do this. It's built to help you share this content with people on the web. So perhaps the most important part of today's talk, if you remember one thing today, I would like it to be this. So if you have a little bit of attention left, focus on this one, is the roles. How do we make sure that we identify in the organization the right people and that we understand what these people should be doing and how they should be communicating? I like to identify 3 roles. The first one is the data steward. The second one is what we call the author. We saw them earlier. And then the third one is perhaps the largest in terms of population group of them all, and it's the consumers. So what are these people and what should they do? These people are the data stewards. They are cooler than you. Look at them. These are the data curators, right? These are the people that understand the technical side, but they can also communicate with everybody else. They can communicate with IT, they can communicate with the business. They know the technology, they understand the data structure, they understand the content that people are supposed to consume, that people are supposed to deliver, that people are supposed to work on. Okay? The authors, the content creators. These people understand the business requirements. This is what they've been doing for years. They know the business, they know the questions, they know the tools, and they know how to build. They also help people share the business logic. They define security, they define metadata, they define calculations that people need to get to that level. Who would identify with sort of this role in the organization at the moment? Come on. I know there's more. I know there's more. Yes. Okay. So yeah, these people are the people that we actually want to consider moving to this, moving to become also data stewards. And then the largest group is that of the consumers. What do? They consume content. Sometimes they might want to explore data ad hoc. They might not be 100% satisfied with what has been produced by the authors, not because the authors can't do their job, but just because we all have different ways that we understand data, that we all have different ways that we like to see data. What works for me might not work for you, right? So sometimes they need to do ad hoc exploration of their data on the fly. They also drive innovation and ideas. Just seeing what these consumers do with the things that we provide them with is a fantastic tool to know whether something that we produced is good. So many times I see people that, especially at the beginning of the Tableau journey, they don't take care of this aspect. They don't look at the server and see what people have been consuming. What comments have been people making about this dashboard? What data sources are being utilized? Should we invest in making this one better, this one faster, because literally everybody in the company uses this data source in some way or another, right? In one way or another. So they can drive innovation and ideas just with their behaviors, but also by contributing to things actively with their ad hoc exploration. They also may not be too sure what a database is. They've heard this word, they know it exists, they know it's a techie thing that some nerd have taken care of in their organization, but they're not too sure, right? So these are the people that if we told them, we got Tableau, here's your key, go play, These are the people that would panic. These are the people that would not do it, that would think, I don't care about this stuff, give me my reports and do your job. Or even when they get enthusiastic and they say, yes, I want to do this, I want to self-serve, I got this. They might make mistakes, they might make suboptimal models. These are the people that can make the mistakes in the self-service model if we don't serve them right. So we saw the sort of linear, I know this is a bit cliche, indulge me, this one. We saw the linear model, which was the data sort of factory, the report factory, where we had our data on the left, we had our experts, developers in the middle, and then we had the output for the consumers. I like to think of this model as more of a circle, right? Where we have data stewards doing their job and making sure that the data is clean and that everything is easy to access, serving the authors creating content that gets pushed to consumers, and the consumers with their behaviors and with their ad hoc analysis helping others, helping data stewards understand what is useful, understand what is being used, understand what should be improved. So I like to see this as a way that people can use to communicate as well. You'd be surprised how often it happens to me that as a Tableau consultant, I set up a Tableau event at a customer that has used Tableau for, I don't know, a year or so. I see Eric smiling, he knows this. And we get in the room, and we have people in the room that have never talked before. We have people that consume reports, we have people that used to create reports, we have the data side, and these people meet each other through Tableau. And that's what we want to sort of enforce. We want people to collaborate and to know what they can do and what they can bring to the company if they do their part right. So you might have noticed, hopefully, that so far, I have mentioned Tableau Data Server a few times, but these concepts that we've been talking about are not necessarily Tableau specific. This is process stuff. This is stuff that you could actually apply in any other context with any other tool, modern analytics tool that lets you do these things, right? So I want to talk about a little bit about what this means in the Tableau world. So we'll start with a new section, but I tricked you. Let's go back to the previous slide. So we've talked about roles. We talked about people and what they can be. I'm sure you've heard about our new price rollout and our new role-based authentication that we have on server. So who thinks they can map this? It's fairly easy, right? So any takers? Data steward, what would they be? A creator, yes. An author, what would they be? Explorer, okay. And consumers? Fantastic. So data stewards are creators, authors are explorers, consumers are viewers. But what if consumers want to do ad hoc exploration? Then they might want to be explorers. What if the authors, yes, they need to author some content and create a lot of content, but they don't want to have desktop? Then an explorer license, might be fine, but what if they want to create data sources on their own? Maybe they want to take a little bit of a role that is in the middle. Why am I saying this? Because this is a framework. I don't want you guys to go back and tell your colleagues, you're an author. Be an author and nothing else. This is a framework, right, where people can be in the middle, they can have mixed roles, but also this can evolve, right? Most of our consumers in the organization might start as simple viewers. Yes, they get the content that is beautifully developed by everybody else. They go in, they interact, they click, they filter, they do whatever they need to do. But then at some point in their Tableau journey, because it's a journey, it doesn't all happen in one day, they might want to do a little bit more. And that's when these viewers might want to become explorers. So again, this is a process. This is a sort of a methodology. It doesn't necessarily tie one-to-one to specific roles in Tableau. So let's talk about the ungoverned versus governed system. So when we talk about people accessing stuff on their own freely, that's when they can make mistakes if they self-serve. This is what we call the ungoverned connection. We have a desktop user or a creator directly connecting to data sources. There's nothing wrong with this as long as they know what they're doing. But for the majority of the people that will need to connect to some data, that's when data server comes in as your repository for data sources. This is where we can have something in place, some tool that is designed to do this actually, take care of that side for us. So we can create data sources, data stewards can publish stuff in there and make sure that it works correctly. Let's take a closer look. This is the complicated world, the data lake, the data warehouse world that we saw on the left earlier. Let's take a look at it again. It's very complex. Who works for an organization that has one single data source that they connect to, one single database? Well, one person maybe. You're lucky. Most organizations have to deal with that. 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 15, 100 different data sources, data coming from various places. It can be hard to go and do that from your Tableau desktop or your creator license, connect from scratch, and deliver content that is right. There are pros to this. Extreme flexibility. If you're an advanced user, you'll love this. You have the flexibility to connect to whatever you want, mash it up. We have prep now, where you can just take data, clean it up, stick it together, union it, join it, and create something extremely customized that will work because you're an expert. You can define connections on the fly, right? I need to connect to this. I have 5 minutes. I don't want to go through the process of publishing it correctly to data server and all of that. Boom, I connect to it, I create it, I share it, done. The cons are, even though I might be an expert, I might be good, I might know how to do this, I might not make any mistakes, there might be duplication of effort. What if there is another person sitting next to me or in another office or on another floor that has to do this exact same thing that I've done? Then we are all wasting time doing exactly the same things twice, 3 times, 10 times, and we're not sharing. There is, I'm going to repeat myself, but there is a risk of data model definition that might go wrong. And there might be not a single version of the truth, which is something that in a modern BI platform we absolutely don't want to have. We might have people thinking that they're looking at the right number, and then other people looking at a different number, and they might have a clash. We don't want that. And there might be duplication of data, and then Hyper starts sweating. Oh my God, too much. So we don't want that either, right? So let's talk about the sort of curated data source creation method, where we have, recognize them, data stewards in blue. What are they doing? They're using Tableau Desktop, they're using Tableau Prep to connect to that mess on the left and turn it into something that is more governed, turn it into something that is usable. Well, how do they do that? They take the content, they define the metadata, they define whatever they need to define, and they push it to the data server component of Tableau Server. And that's where people will come in and connect to those data sources. Our desktop or our creators on server will have the ability to connect to data sources that have been published to data server and produce the beautiful reports that you see on the right. Our web authors, our mobile users, will be able to consume reports that feed off of those data server data sources, and they might be able to also self-serve by creating ad hoc content on the fly. Do you have any questions so far? I've been talking a lot. I think I need a break. Questions? Yeah.
One of the issues I have with the users accessing data sources in Tableau is the way the permissions work. So, for example, I currently have around 80 hypers uploaded to the server.
Yep.
Probably 3 of them is sufficient for every user to pull their own metrics.
Yeah.
However, for everyone to be able to see the reports, you got to enable the view functionality to the database.
Okay.
Right? To the data source, the hyper published
Yeah.
data source. What I would like to have is some way of the users being able to see every report connected to any data sources. But when they use Tableau Desktop, they'll only be able to see those 3 stamped data sources that are official, and you can pull any metric you want without any risk of wrong numbers or anything.
Yeah, so essentially, repeat the question. How do we set up permissions so that authors that need to create content from desktop maybe will not see 80 data sources and might be confused in what to use? But I still need those data sources to be on server because we have content that feeds off of those data sources, right? My favorite way, we don't have a way to limit what people can see other than not allowing them to see that content. What we can do is we can certify data sources. That is my favorite way to do that.
You still have to train them on, make sure
Yeah.
Because you can't even sort.
Yeah. There's a bit of training that needs to happen, but yeah. At the moment, certifying data sources and telling people this is what you connect to when you want to create a operations report, right? Or a marketing report or whatever they need to do. That's currently the best way, in my opinion, to do it. All right, we'll have more time for questions later. So curated data sources give us a single version of the truth. They enable self-service analytics for business users. We can rely on data experts to define the models, and we can share these certified data sources across the organization. The pros are data quality and security. All the metadata is managed centrally. All changes are cascaded to content, right? Let's imagine I have that data source Wild West scenario where everybody, skilled as they are, they're creating their own content and their own data sources. Then what if a metric changes? Then what if a definition changes? I have to cascade all this content manually. But if I have one certified data source that is for my marketing analytics, then I'm done, right? I rectify that, I correct that, and I'm good. And data security. We talked about that, permissions, how to access. We can also check and control that people will only see the portion of the data that belongs to them when they connect to it. User experience, we talked about it earlier. User can access these centrally managed data sources via the web browser, via desktop, without having to know any technical, without having to have any technical knowledge at all. And users might be our consumers that might not be technically too savvy. They don't need to be concerned with database connections, tables, credentials, joins, and all the lingo. And then, this is so important that I actually put it in the session description. I don't know if any of you guys noticed, but live versus extract. And again, I'm so happy that we have the hyper people, so I can make so many jokes. You will be surprised to know how many times I've seen customers that have been using Tableau for a while still not have a very clear understanding of what we should be using one or the other for. I think, in my experience, this is one of the biggest differentiators for Tableau as a platform. The ability to do both is fantastic. So in some situations, live is absolutely the way to go. In some situations, it's absolutely not the way to go, and that's why we invest a lot of money in making sure that we have a data engine that works very, very well. But that data engine can't do everything. It's not a replacement for your entire corporate data warehouse. It's not a replacement for a big data platform that might help you sort through thousands of terabytes of data. We hope that one day it might be, but the reality is that there are platforms out there that are designed to do live analytics up to the second on volumes of data that require a proper platform to be designed. So people that know exactly when to switch from one to the other and when to use one or the other are fundamental. And that's why we need people that are experts in understanding the data side to enable others to do it. Because it might not be too clear which one to use to our authors, to our consumers, to people that are not super technically savvy. Okay, so how do I set up my data sources? What is the data source strategy and what does it look like? What do I actually have to do? What are the things that I have to take care of? Data quality. I need to correct. I need to define the correct models. I need to make sure that my data is fresh. Business logic, one single source of truth, that's fundamental. I like that people are taking pictures of this. It's kind of I'm repeating, but it's sort of what we've been talking about so far, right? Defining centrally our KPIs, our definitions, our metadata, our calculations. Data security, a lot of times we have to meet compliance requirements, regulation, legal stuff. We need to make sure that our data is safe. Row and column level security. And then auditability, so important. In order to enable that additional level of cooperation, let's study, let's understand what people are doing, how people are consuming this content. Is it fast? Is it slow? Are they having issues? Is it not refreshing correctly? We need to keep an eye on the server deployment and know what's going on at all times. So what is data governance? I'm not going to read all of these. You guys know all of this stuff. But again, another slide to sort of recap all of the things that you can take care of if you work with data server correctly. All of this stuff you can define, and this will help end users self-serve. This will help people feel that they can trust the data source that they're connecting to, feel that the data source that they're connecting to is helping them do their job and not being an obstacle, not being an additional challenge that could be a barrier to adoption. Because ultimately, going back to my intro, this is for adoption. This is because we have realized, we are in a scenario where we have realized that the old tools combined with the old processes are limiting the scalability of our BI infrastructure. So we want to make sure that all of these things are nice and clear and set up so that we can scale, so that we can give this and roll this out to 10, 50, 100, 5,000 people in our organization, and that we have the resources to do that. UBS, one of our customers, they're very vocal about their Tableau usage. They're at the conference all the time. They manage this with 5 people for an organization of 20,000 employees, 30,000 employees, something like that. And if you have the processes done right, and if you have this stuff correctly set up, the central BI team can really scale and manage this for thousands of people, tens of thousands. Who's sick of me using PowerPoint? Eric is sick. Thanks, Eric. Okay, so let's take a look at some actual Tableau stuff. So recently, my girlfriend is a civil engineer, so recently I've become interested in civil engineering and green buildings, which is sort of a hot topic, building green construction, all of that stuff. There's a methodology called BREEAM. It was developed in the UK, and essentially it's a way to certify how the building was built, constructed, to meet those standards. It goes beyond what the law requires. It's actually more demanding in terms of standards that you have to respect, and it gives you very nice ratings of whether your building is constructed well in terms of efficiency and green. They also are very nice in that all of their data is publicly available. They give us access to this. They're web developers. I hope they're not in the room. They could have made a better job and making it easy to download. So this is the barrier, right? We have how many pages? If you want to get access to this data, you have to download it from 847 pages. So imagine you are a data explorer and you really need to know what's the average score for buildings in this region. What do? You do nothing, because you look at this and you say, bye. Nope, I'm not doing this, right? So this is where we need someone with the patience and the skills like me to write a script and scrape this data from the web and save it somewhere nice, right? So this is my data steward's hat. I downloaded the data. I've also noticed that the person that has set up this database thought that it'd be a good idea to mix numbers and dimensions. So we have a rating and a score in one single column. Isn't that dandy? Isn't that excellent? Isn't that the best way to help us analyze this data very, very quickly? No, it's not. There are also other issues. The postcodes are all not clean, and there's a lot of stuff that is not perfect about this. But it's so interesting that I think people will benefit from having this. So what do I bring in? The big guns. Prep. So I've downloaded all that stuff. You have to trust me on that one, and I put it in a CSV that I called BREEAM, which is again our methodology. So with prep, wearing my data steward hat, I can connect to it, maybe. Yes, I can. And I can see all the stuff that's in there. I can actually go and add a step and actually see all the stuff that's in there. We have our profiling pane where we can see what the data looks like. We have our actual data pane where we can see the actual structure of the table. And first thing that I noticed is this is not great. This doesn't help me get to that level of aggregating the data very easily. So what can I do with Tableau Prep is I can split these values automatically. Boom. Go in here. Now I have one metric, and the profiling pane is also giving me an idea of the distribution of this metric, and I have my actual rating. Is it excellent? Is it good? Is it very good? Also, there are some spelling mistakes in this one. Let's fix them very quickly. Group and replace by pronunciation. Now I have split these two. This one I still don't like, so I'm going to go ahead and change it manually. We also have some that are unclassified. Do not care about that. I'm going to exclude them. So just very quickly, as a data steward, I've taken care of the connection side. I've taken all the data and made it in a format that is accessible by something like Prep. I've easily identified something that I know will be a huge pain for my customers, for my consumers, the fact that there was a field that was simply impossible to analyze because it was numbers and text together. And I've made it a little bit easier for them to analyze this. There's a lot more that could be done with this. Let's just do one more thing. This is not a Tableau Prep training, so I don't want to waste too much time on this. But this is a date field, for example. So this kind of stuff. Another thing that I know is that my company operates in the UK. We couldn't care less about all these other countries, although I'm sure they have very nice buildings. We work in the UK. We care about buildings in the UK. And also, we are very keen that we can aggregate this data at higher levels than just postcode. So here we have the full address and the postcode in this data set. I want to see this at the county level, at the state level. So in order to do that, I have another file. Then I'm going to join in another text file with my geographical areas. Bring it in. Give it a sec. And when it comes up, I can just drag it here and make a new join. And picks up that postcode is the common field. It also picks up that there is some data in both of these tables that will not be matched. This is one of my favorite things about prep, the way it handles joining and the way it tells me and gives me control over what actually I'm keeping from both data sources. So I can see that from my first data source, the Bream one, I'm keeping pretty much half the rows. That's because I've joined that with an inner join to data that is only about the UK. So I'm getting rid, just by doing this join, of everything that my company doesn't need. And also some postcodes are simply not there, so they're being excluded from the geo areas file that we have. So it's it's one of those things that if I am a data steward, if I understand what this means, it's very easy for me to understand. I have the tools to do this, but I might not be too sure of what I'm doing if I'm an author or if I'm a consumer, right? So this is where my my data steward hat comes very handy, where I can serve people with this. Okay, so next step. I think we're done. We can output this. And that's where, finally, data server comes in, right? I can publish this as a data source. Let's give it a name, Bream. Select a project. Default is enough. And let's run this flow. Righty, we're published. It's taken us to Tableau Server. We can see that that data source has been published correctly, and it's available in our project. What's next? What hat do we wear next? We wear the hat of the author. I am tasked to build some actual content that I have to share, some analytics that I have to share within my organization. If I had to do this connecting to this, I would have given up. But now, there's a data steward in my organization, bless him, and they've published content to a fantastic Tableau server. Let me just refresh this. Come on. Let's sign up. And let's sign in again. Localhost. And Tyler, the creator. I heard one laugh. Someone got this joke. Fantastic. Thank you. Wow, what have I done wrong? Well, I have this one. Sorry? Ah. Thank you. That was embarrassing. Bream. It's here now. Okay. So now my data source is clean. I have the ratings. Can bring them in, average them, and see that the average rating overall is 62. This is on a base of 1 to 100. What else can I do? I can get an easy understanding of what the distribution of these ratings is. Let's build a quick histogram. Boom. This is something that I find fascinating, the fact that it's not a normal distribution. I don't know if anybody expected that to be like that. It's interesting. So there's a peak at 70. Anybody has any ideas on why that might be? If we bring, yeah. So if we bring in this, for example, on color, this is sort of the requirement to be excellent. So it's interesting to see that in order to give buildings an excellent rating, clearly the reviewers are bumping up the scores. They're not giving you a 68, they're not giving you a 67, they're giving you a 70 so that you can be excellent. Also, it's interesting to me to see that some of them still have an excellent with a rating of 67, which is weird. I also have some, there's a field with the scheme. Let's bring that to filters. What does that mean? We can apply this methodology to very different types of buildings. And that doesn't mean that we don't necessarily need to have the same metrics for all of them. So something that is excellent in healthcare in 2011 might not be excellent in healthcare in 2015, right? So that's why some of the scoring doesn't necessarily make sense. And that's why it's even more important to have the actual number. If you want to have something that is unique across all of these different schemes and different years, the number that we extracted as data stewards is fundamental. It's the only thing that gives us that full picture. Okay, so let's keep this. I quite like this, very colorful. And this is my distribution. And region, give it its nice county role, bring this in, and I have all of my UK counties, and I can bring in my rating, and boom, I can see, let's give it actually a nicer color palette, and we can see who's the worst offender, who's the worst at building green, Perth and Kinross. And also we have another one here. I am not going to murder this. Do we have any Welsh people that can pronounce this, or any English people that have an idea how to say that? Because I really don't. Huh? Yeah, that's what I said. Thank you. Sorry, excuse an Italian and its difficulties with the pronunciation. Okay, so let's build a dashboard. Again, this is not a lesson on prep, and it's not a lesson on desktop. You all know how to do this stuff, so I'm going to go very quickly, very quickly. We can make this bigger, automatic, and as Tyler, the creator, we're signed in. Let's publish this workbook. We can publish it in our project. Let's call it rating analysis. And boom, we're now into our server environment, logged in. Look, I didn't put the icon. We're an author. Let's sign out, and let's log in as Dora. Who's Dora? The explorer. Sorry, I know. Why? I'm struggling with workbooks today. Thankfully, I published this one before, so we can use this one. It's exactly the same, but it doesn't have the same name, book one. Okay, so we have this. We have our score distribution. We have our rating by county. As an explorer, this is fantastic. I appreciate this, but it's not giving me what I need. It's not giving me the full picture. So what can I do now? Because I have editing capabilities. I can edit this workbook. And what I'm interested in is understanding whether there is a correlation between the cost of a building and the green rating. So the question is it expensive to build green buildings? Do we need to invest more money? Is it more common to find green buildings in richer areas of the country or not? So what can I do? I can bring in an additional data source. We have this data source. We've had it for years. It's the UK House Prices Index. And look, it's certified. Going back to your question, this is a data source that I know I can trust. A data steward, an administrator in this case of the platform, has set this up as a certified data source. I know this is correct. I can connect to it directly from within my browser. And now I have my hyper output that I built in Tableau Prep, and I have my UK House Price Index. So what can I do? I can bring in my scores again here. Let's average that. And by region, put that on detail. And I also have region here. Minor mistake by the data steward. This should have been not capital. Why is this even certified? And then I can bring in my cache index. Also average this. And we can see some interesting things with this. Let's not include the 0 in this. Who wants to guess if there's a correlation? Do we see? Let's bring the cash price, not the cash index. That's a better metric. And average this as well. Who wants to guess that dot, the highest average cash price in the UK for a house? Where will that be? That is the City of London. Does that mean that they have the highest rating in terms of green buildings? Is a higher cash price associated with that? Not necessarily. And if you look at this distribution, there's no clear indicator that anywhere in the UK there's a correlation between a higher price, a higher construction price, and whether a building is green. So actually, building green is cheap. It could be cheap if done correctly. So this is something that as a green builder, I can use to go and sell my green building methodology. And if we want to enrich that a little bit, we can bring in a trend line. And we can see that actually, even though the p-value is not great for the more statistically inclined in the room, it's going actually down a little bit. The trend goes down. The more expensive it is, the least we care about whether it's green or not, which is somewhat surprising, but not really if we think about it. Okay, any questions on this? We've reached the 45 minutes mark. Any questions on the different hats, the interaction of the different users that we've had?
So for the author, you kind of expect to deal with data blending.
Yes, that's a very good point. So at this stage, data blending is the right way to bring this data together at this stage. Granularity is very different. If I joined that as a steward, wouldn't be great. It would be actually harder, in my opinion, for people to deal with the errors in the aggregation and having to do LOD stuff to fix the granularity than it is to blend. So obviously I made a mistake in this and the regions were not named correctly, but what you want to do as a data steward is make sure that you choose the right way. Do I need to blend these data sources or do I need to join these data sources? What is the best way to address this, right? In some cases, it's better to leave it to the end user to bring that additional information in. Even as a consumer, I can be trained on, there's a button here that lets me add stuff, right? And there's a certified data source, and when I bring that in, I know that I can correlate prices using that one for this. So in my opinion, in some cases, even though yes, you have to take care of that step as an author or as an explorer, however you want to call them, it is easier to use blending than it is to fix aggregations that are wrong if we join everything together. And that's, again, going back to the idea of the different skill sets that we need to have. Can we take care of this in the data warehouse? Can we create one single consolidated data source that will answer all of these questions? Maybe. Maybe yes. We can build a cube that will give us the right answer. But how long is that going to take, right? Something where we'll have the certainty that there's the right aggregation for all the different data sources that we brought in from a website, from a database that we have internally. It's tough. It's time consuming. But with this, training the consumers on how to do this right, we can really empower them to do this right on their own.
From the point of view data server and hyper, do you prefer more and smaller data sources, or rather a few and huge ones?
I don't know, but they know.
Whatever works for your data. So,
Yeah, of course.
Exactly.
It should work way better for larger data sources than TDE did ever.
Yeah.
So yeah, it highly depends on the data you have.
Thanks.
But talk to us about the specifics of your data later.
Do you have any suggestions on documenting data sources? So how you share the knowledge about what it's providing or what KPI means?
So yeah, I like to use the description of the data source for people to know when they hover on something. You can add the comment in desktop. So when they hover on a dimension or a measure, they know what that measure is. I also like in server to set up my server so that every data source and every project and every workbook has a description. So you can go and change in a project, we can let you know exactly what's in there. We can have comments to everything. We actually have something coming up where it will be a lot easier to manage this metadata information about data sources. So you can expect some improvements in the way that we let you also monitor that stuff. There was another question in the back. I saw you there. I'll get to everybody.
Yeah. Is there a way to, once you have a data source defined, is there a way to remap the underlying data connection, but keep the metadata? So you kind of have a somewhat different use case where we are forced to keep our customer data separate. So we have to produce the same report for 36 customers, we have to put 36 data sources, all the metadata for calculations would be the same.
So is there a way, the question was, is there a way to replace the underlying data? What does this data source connect to in terms of database, but keep everything that I've defined? I would say yes, especially if you're in a live connection. In a live connection, it's super easy, right? You go back to your data source pane, you click on it, and you just change the table, for example, underneath, and everything stays. You can also use replace data source. If you have calculations, it will keep that. So that's another way to do that. Another way that I've seen people implement this is with our REST API. The REST API and the document API. I've seen people define everything in a workbook and change the way the data source connects to the database dynamically. I have a customer that does that to essentially serve the same data dashboard, to thousands of their customers. The data source structure is exactly the same for all of them, but they are legally required to keep the customer's data in physically separated databases. So what they do is they create one workbook that acts as a template, and then with the REST API and the Documents API, they go and open the workbook and change the data source connection values so that they can produce 1,000 workbooks starting from one single one that point into different databases. So the answer is it depends on the scale, right? You can do it manually by changing, or the APIs let you do that at scale. There was a question over there? Yeah. That's fair enough. Is football coming home?
I've sort of inadvertently fallen into the role of a Tableau server admin by an organisation recently. I'm not expert by any means, but I found that data sources can be at that high level project workloads we use data sources, but it can also be within the project or within the workload themselves. Can you provide an idea for me, sort of methodologically, as to how I might decide where a data source should go? Because I find that having lots of data sources in the top level leads to sort of the classic data lake problem. It becomes a bit muddy and it's quite hard to help users know which one they should be using.
It's a very good question. So there's a difference that the question was around publishing data sources to the data server and have them show up as data sources there, or have them, as we say, embedded in a workbook. So the best practice, in my opinion, is to have embedded data sources in workbooks that you know when you know a data source will only be used in that scenario, right? Every time you know that you're building a report on the time logging activity of your company, of your employees, right? It's very sensitive. We don't want anybody else to see what you've been doing and what someone else has been doing, right? That's the HR report. Only HR people will see it. There's no reason to publish that as a data source because we only want the data source to be used in the context of a single dashboard that will be accessed by HR management, right? So you could publish that as data source and then with permissions, not make it seen by anybody else. But what's the point, right? Just keep it as part of a workbook as an embedded data source. If you know your data sources will be used for other projects as well, that's where you publish them as individual data sources to data server so that people can access them.
On that question, can you still request the data source if it's embedded on the workbook?
Yes.
Can you build an extra just for that workbook?
Yes. You can refresh data sources even if they are embedded in a workbook, yes.
For preparation of those data to print, let's say when thousands of buildings every day viewing the website, it's easily downloadable. Can you use prep to automate the operation?
So the question is about prep and automation, and the answer is in the future. As far as I know, I think it's the feature that is, that has the highest likes and it's in demand. We know people want it, and we're actually happy that people want it because it means that people are seeing potential for prep and that they want to use it in the future for more than just I have one Excel and want to fix it. So it's coming. It's coming. Automation in prep is there. Everything is set up for it to work. We just have to have the little additional piece that will let us automate the refresh. But everything is set up. Yeah?
So what you presented on the authors and shown us how to do that add-ins, do you have any recommendation on hardware what I need to place for the server, like to use for the server?
Hardware sizing?
Yes, in order to keep that flowing and support that self-service.
Yeah, that's a very good question, and that's actually something that I do all the time with my customers in the sort of consulting phase. Sizing the machine is absolutely. We have actually Paul Awi in the room, one of the biggest experts on sizing at Tableau. Look at him. Go ask him later. Sizing is really important, of course. We do have recommended specifications on our website. But the most important thing that I can teach you about sizing is that it's sort of more of an art than a science. That we don't really provide metrics, right? You need 2,000 users and you have 5 workbooks and you have 10 terabytes of data, that scientifically means that you need this machine for it to work. There's so many aspects that concur to what the sizing should be. Where are your users? Are you using live or are you using hyper?
I'm focusing on live connection.
Yeah.
With the simple data source is big and kind of quick. Well, backup.
We like big data and we cannot lie.
But the focus should be on the user. So I want to encourage self-service, and I really want to get them to do what you just showed me.
In that case, that's what we call.
I know it's a new thing. Yeah, we're all excited about that. We're doing that mistake, self-service analytics thing.
Yeah.
But we have to start somewhere. So
Yeah.
we have to calculate things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something that we help you do as consultants. So that's where I would come in and have a conversation with you about aspects like what's your user base like? What's the distribution of people that are going to be consumers, viewers, explorers, and so on? How complex are your dashboards that you're building? How many users do you have? Which is probably the first question that I should have asked. So there's a lot of things that concur, and that's where we really need to have that one-to-one conversation, because the answer is specific to your own deployment and to your own company. But we can definitely have that conversation and help you size the environment correctly. I saw a hand. Oh, sorry. I'll get there. Yeah.
What can be this is the best practice that we have to enable people consuming data sources that are published in the server?
Yeah.
Regarding security. So there's people who will have access to part of the data in the data source,
Yep.
but not all of them.
Yeah.
So I can handle that by creating the dashboard and putting the security in there. But they want to create their own dashboard.
Excellent question. So I'll just repeat that for this side of the room. The question is, I have data sources. The best practice that we want to follow in our organization is to do this, right? Publish data sources so that people can self-serve. How can I do that and at the same time make sure that when people connect to the data source, they only see their portion of the data and not all of it? I know I can do it in a workbook, in a dashboard, and have those filters come in. Can I do that in a data source as well? The answer is yes, absolutely. Whenever you create your users filters, whether you do it manually or you do it automatically with calculations and bringing in that data from a table that has all of your mappings, you can apply that filter to the data source before you publish it. So it will behave exactly the same way that your dashboards are behaving, but it will be embedded into the data source. The security will be embedded there. And it's actually best practice to do it that way.
Quick follow-up to that. Will it work with the impersonation in desktop? 'Cause that was an issue.
With impersonation, I guess that depends on the database that you're using. Yes. Yes. It should. It should. But in that... Sorry?
If it's a published source,
If it's a...
impersonation doesn't work on
Yeah.
desktop, which is one of the issues
Yeah, you're correct.
with that, because you have to have it like a test user
Yeah.
for every kind of.
Do you know if there's any plans to change that?
I honestly do not know. Sorry. We can follow up on that. Not yet, but we're looking into that. So we have now alerting and things like that. So potentially we can help you with that in the future. Yeah. I see a lot of people leaving, so I know we have 2 minutes left. I just want to finish with 2 things, and just a few key takeaways from today. The first one is self-service is a great idea, but it needs governance. It's not something that you plug and play and it works from day one. You need to have the right processes in place. It's as important as the tool. We need to define the right roles. We need to find who's going to do what and who's going to help us with what aspect of this flow and this new process. Use all of the elements of the Tableau platform. You are paying for them. Use them. Just be aware. You have prep available now if you have a creator license. Use it when it's appropriate. You have data server as a component of Tableau server. Use that appropriately. Know when to publish data sources and know when to embed those data sources in workbooks. And then these roles can evolve. Do not think of the methodology that we discussed today as something that is set in stone. It will evolve. You will have people that will take on multiple roles, especially in smaller organizations, and that's fine. And you will have people that will want to take on more as they mature on their Tableau journey. Finally, I am sure that you all trust me and that it's been interesting, I hope, hearing that from someone from Tableau, but we actually have one of my customers, James Linnett, is a fantastic presenter, and he's presenting about this and about his journey at National Grid, becoming the data steward, the data expert, the central team that is taking care of this. So if you're interested in this methodology and you want to actually hear some customers that have done it, I would recommend that you go to this session, which is right after this one in Capital Suite 10. Thank you all very much for coming. Believe it or not, we do read the feedback that you give on the survey app. We try to make it as hard as possible for you to actually do the survey. I've had the feedback before this year. Sometimes it crashes, apparently, when you click on the survey. But if you keep clicking on the orange arrow, I'm told it works. So please, if you can, go and rate the session. I would appreciate that. And we do look at the feedback and try to make it better for the following years. Thank you very much for coming.